Hotter Than Health podcast, a plant-dominant podcast for those looking to expand and elevate their lives. Each week, we will bring you provocative conversations and topics, entertaining interviews, and some of the biggest names in health and wellness to answer your burning questions. You will leave each episode with tangible tips and takeaways and understand what it truly means to live an energized and optimized life. Hello. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Hotter Than Health. If this is your first time listening, welcome. This is a show all about health and wellness and nutrition, and we have been taking different approaches to lifestyle, holistic wellness, intuitive eating, fasting products, and today it's in a sense a solo episode. However, I wanted to preface and make sure that I put this out there. I was invited onto a podcast interview a couple of weeks ago from Mackenzie Belcastro. She has the North Star podcast. We had a really great conversation, and I think that overall it was fun because we talked a lot about things, not so much all personal things, but we talked a lot about gut instinct. We talked about food. We talked about my childhood and how it came to be that I really got into health and wellness and a little bit of the backstory. And I wanted to preface before we get into the episode that I don't want it to feel too self-indulgent. I know that it's, let's listen to me talk about me on a recording. But I do think that there are some valuable pieces in this episode that have some good takeaways. And that's really all I want out of each episode, is for you to have tangible takeaways, tips, facts, and not just statistics, but having some references and relatability when it comes to who's actually giving you this information. And I also want to let you all know that I know if you follow me on Instagram, you know I've been traveling a lot more for work, and I've been posting more about what to do while traveling, how to live in a hotel and still be healthy. And I haven't touched on exactly what I'm doing. And a lot of people think that I'm traveling for the podcast. And that is the case once in a while. And I do try and get things done for the podcast interviews and stuff when I am traveling, if I'm in the right area. But overall, over the past year, I haven't talked about it on this podcast, but I've been making a little bit of a career adaptation, and I do talk about that in this episode. 6 years ago, when I started working personally with clients in nutrition and wellness fitness, it was always, I have never not enjoyed it. I've loved every bit of what I'm doing, and I'm not stopping, but I have been basing more of my career around what we're talking about today. And to give you a little bit of insight, this feels really right for me. And it's something that has been a present opportunity, kind of omnipresent throughout my entire life. And I know I sound ambiguous when I talk about it right now, but you'll see what I'm talking about when we get into the episode, probably closer towards the end. But if you are someone who, I don't even want to give any more, and not to say, I don't mean to cock tease, but I'm going to give you more information on what I'm actually doing, and I don't want to just spill it right now because there's more context in the episode. I'm excited because I think that a lot of people think that my whole livelihood, all my income, everything that I do with travel is for the podcast and for nutrition, and I don't want it to seem that I have everything all together and this is, it's so easy. I do have a full-time job along with nutrition, along with personal training and the podcast. And in my ideal circumstance, it is going to be my full-time job that we talk about on the podcast, as well as the podcast, So those two things are my priority right now. I'm going to be rolling out some things in the next couple coming months that will streamline the process. Make sure you're following along on the podcast. If you hit subscribe, then you will be let into the know on what's going on and what will be going on, so that I can continue to do all these things without driving myself absolutely fucking crazy. Because if you have ever been in a transition in your career, you know that you at some points are wearing a lot of hats and it's overwhelming. And it's only overwhelming if you don't see a vision, or if it can always be overwhelming, but you don't necessarily, if you don't have an end goal, or if you don't have something you're working towards, that's when it becomes a hamster spinning its wheels, and you feel like every day you're circling the drain, but you don't know where an end is in sight. So, and that's not where I am. So that's why I feel really good and collected about where I am in career. Wholly self-indulgent, that is obnoxious, but I'm excited for this episode. Mackenzie did a great job. We tangented. She has a podcast, and we talk about, zodiacs, and we talk about holistic lifestyle things, but overall I think there's some good nuggets, especially if you are in any type of transitional phase in your life, whether it is in relationships, in your job, in fitness, in wellness, any sense. But I really hope you like this episode. I think you will. And I wanted to just give a shout out to Mackenzie. She did a great job. And as a fellow podcaster, it's nice to have those real conversations with people who are trying to just figure their shit out. But without further ado, thank you so much, Mackenzie, for having me. This is a glimpse into the North Star podcast, so make sure you check her out as well. But make sure you're liking, subscribing, and sharing this episode. Feel free to reach out if you have questions, and make sure you're following on social media so that you can be up to date on what things will be rolling out soon. But without further ado, let's get into it. Welcome to the Hotter Than Health podcast meets North Star podcast.
I'm sitting with a pro. I recognize that fully. You are.
Oh my gosh. Clearly.
Yeah. I mean, things happen, but no, seriously, I like so much kudos to you on your podcast. It's so good.
Oh my gosh. Thanks.
Yeah, no, seriously. You have such a gift with relaying information. Like even I feel like a lot to your solo episodes, and you have such a gift with just like making information so interesting. And then you have your tangents, and they're great. And we get to meet your dog, and it's like
we might get to meet him again today. He is so old, and he really only picks up on vibrations. So when he hears me speaking, he's like, oh, gotta figure out where it's coming from. So, but that really is so kind. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, I mean it. I would love to start out by hearing a little bit about you and, pointedly you as a kid. I always think it's so interesting to hear about people when they were little. So could you tell us a little bit about what you're like growing up, and then we'll take it on from there.
That is an interesting question.
Mm-hmm.
When I was growing up, I will say in our household, we were in the industry that I'm in my household, we were always focused on more whole foods. I mean, we still had our fair share of, food that we grew up with in the 90s and the early 2000s and as a kid. But my dad always really ingrained in me the benefits of whole foods. Mm-hmm. And if I had a headache or if I was really extra cold, he noticed, he was never a doctor or anything like that, but he always noticed, hey, let's cook our greens or our meat in a cast iron skillet to get more iron. And there were always those little ties into lifestyle.
Yeah.
But as a child, I think that I was underlying anxious because I would prefer to spend time by myself and get anxious around other people, but I wasn't comfortable being by myself, if that makes any sense.
That's so interesting. What did you feel when you were by yourself?
I think that I always thought that I should be with people or I should be wanting to do things, but I think I was always more creative and had more fun spending time alone. But I think that I had a sense of, I think I was working on attachment theories really, really at a young age. But either way, I recognize that now as I think that I did want more alone time, but I wasn't sure of how to do that. But I think I was a happy kid, and I grew up with two very loving families, but we moved a ton. There was volatility in the lifestyle because, financially we went up and down a lot, like high highs, low lows. And then I always looked up to my older sister. I thought she was just the most amazing, coolest thing ever. We went to some pretty interesting schools, had some interesting stories, but around the age of 13, I think I don't know what it was in me. Maybe it was the middle child in me, but I was never a bad kid, but I did a lot of stuff that I pray to God my children don't do. I often get asked by clients, friends, anyone on social media about different products and supplements that are good for balancing hormones, that are good for helping to support during certain times of the month. And as you know, we just had on a whole podcast episode about the female cycle and every stage of it. And one product that I consistently recommend to clients, friends, family, and I take myself is any of the Organifi Gold flavors. These flavors have different adaptogens that are really fantastic for reducing inflammation. It has extra turmeric, ginger, and warming properties that help to really ease inflammation, soothe any type of cramping, and also help to stabilize and balance out hormones, as well as help to flush other hormones out. The reason I love Organifi's products, especially the Gold right now, is because everything is organic, of course, but also glyphosate residue friendly and tracked, so we don't have to worry about any of the gnarly chemicals that go into mass-produced different supplements. You can head out to Organifi.com/HTH right now and until the 30th. They are doing a fall promotion and you can kind of mix and match the flavors. But if you buy any flavor of the Gold, and you know that chocolate is my absolute favorite, then you can get 50% off of another. So if you're wanting to try a gift, if you're wanting to stock up in your refrigerator, maybe you're wanting to add a pumpkin flavor or a ginger, cinnamony, chocolatey flavor to your baking or your smoothies or your oatmeal, cookies, whatever it is, this is a fantastic option and has so many different health benefits as far as the ingredients. But you can head to Organifi.com/HTH for 20% off. And if you head to that link and you buy any flavor of the Gold, again, I recommend the chocolate and then get some of the pumpkin flavors, and you will get 50% off of that second product. I'm obsessed with Organifi. You know that I live and breathe these products. And even if they weren't sponsoring the podcast, I would still use them anyways. Make sure you check out Organifi.com/HTH, and until October 30th, you can use 50% off of your second tub for any purchase of the Gold products. You will not regret it. Enjoy your sweet, creamy beverages. Like, I would sneak out all the time. I was so boy crazy. Oh, I think it was that, anxiety, that validation. I was so boy crazy, and phones, texting had just came out when I was, 14, 15. Not even, it was like T983.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. When were you born? If you don't mind, I need to.
I was 1993.
Same. Okay, I had a feeling. Okay. I'm like, we must be.
Yes.
Basically, yeah, and we are the same year. That makes
sense.
And
I remember when everyone was starting to get their first phones, and they were for emergencies only. Buttons were huge. Snake was a thing, and so we were it would be so cryptic, like meet here at 12, and then I would never know where exactly here was. But anyways, stealing alcohol, drinking, experimenting with drugs, definitely experimenting with boys at a younger age than I think any of my friends. And small tangent, I went to a different school than a lot of the friends that I had grown up with. So I feel like I almost lived two lives, where I had a group of friends that it was a little more wholesome, like your typical middle school, high school. But then at my other parents' house, when I had the opportunity to sneak out all the time, that was when there was a lot of drinking and boys, and I was 13, 14 hanging out with 18-year-olds and like getting into cars when people were drunk. Wow. It was a freaking mess. But I think that I got my crazy phase out when I was really, really young. Okay. And anyways, so growing out of that into college, I definitely am more of a introvert, homebody, but I love to travel. So I'd rather go on a big trip than go to like a huge dinner with friends or a house party. So I'm very on the extremes. I'm either wanting to plan a whole trip to South America, or I want to be at home cooking my meals every single night, listening to music. I don't really have I'm not like, oh yeah, I'll go out a couple days a week. It's not really me.
That's it. Well, first of all, I completely relate to pretty much where you landed, and not the two separate. That's really interesting that you had like two separate kind of lives. Although, I mean, in a way, don't most teenagers? In a way, you kind of have like a secret self, and then you have like yourself that you were around
Yes.
everyone at school.
And it just so happened that I was not two different people, because energetically I was very much the same.
Oh,
but
that's amazing.
When I was with one parent, I would have the opportunity to do other things when I was with another parent. But I always had a great relationship with our parents. They were never, I mean, amazing childhood. It was just the rebellion in me, but I think I just took it too far sometimes, and I never told anyone. So it always felt this pent up, maybe shame, but you know, it's all fun stories now.
Yeah, that's interesting. At this stage in your life, do you find that you still have a tendency towards like extremes? Do you take things far? Do you have like that personality type, or is that more of like a child's like youth thing?
I think when it comes to extremes, so I think I try and play it off like they're not extremes, and it's just who I am, because I'm an Aries, I'm fiery, but when I try and quell that, it comes out as like anger and resentment. But when I live into it, it's more the fiery side of being bold in decisions that I make. So right now, and yeah, I will do things for extremes. Like I'll do 48-hour water fasts, or I will go hit a workout really, really hard. But I'm trying to find that middle ground.
Yeah.
And I think I've done a decent job of figuring it out right now, but it's like with anything in career, I'll take on way too much at a time, and then I'll be pissed off at myself because then things will slip through the cracks, or I try and do too much. But extremes, yes and no. Still with the big trips and then the staying home, but that's just, I'm cool with it.
Yeah, it sounds healthy, which makes sense given what what you do and who you are as a guide for people in nutrition. How did you, I mean, it sounds like your dad was sort of a force of inspiration in the wellness scene for you as a kid growing up. When did you come back to it? Did you ever go away from it while you were, partying, etc., as a kid?
My dad gave so much of the holistic lifestyle approach, but then like we didn't have any packaged food in the house. It was eggs, whole foods, raw quinoa, even when I was younger. So we had the superfoods when I was really young, and it was just how we ate. And then at my mom's house, she really instilled in me home cooking, and it was a huge treat if we went out to eat. And then so it was the home cooking and the holistic approach that I feel so grateful that I had. And but I would say that it never really left me. So I don't think I've even told the story on podcast before, but Okay. So we all know that person on our Christmas list or our holiday gift giving list who you can never really figure out what to get them, but you know that they're going to get you something good. And maybe you feel like, oh, well, I have a bunch of little things for this person, but I want to get them something really, really cool, unique, that is different, that they would never get themselves. Because there are some of those people out there who, if they want something, they will just go out and get it themselves. All right. Let me introduce you to your new wellness best friend, Analemma. Okay, so Analemma is a revolutionary new device that radically changes the state of our drinking water. No, don't skip forward just because I said it, drinking water. This is a stainless steel crystal wand that you swirl around in your water, and it drastically changes the actual molecules of H2O in your water. So, see, H2O molecules are actually pretty chaotic and frantic. They bump into each other and they're running all over the place. However, the cells and the molecules of H2O in our body are in a coherent state, which means that they're calm, they're in a nice crystalline structure. So what happens is our body is using this energy to convert the H2O molecules of water that we're drinking to match the molecules that are in our body. And that's not what we want. We want them all to be on the same electromagnetic frequency. So when you twirl this wand into your water, I just did it with my water in my mason jar, it basically crystallizes and rearranges the molecules into a more stable and remarkable influential structure for your body. Analemma is a technology that was created by two scientists in the Netherlands. You probably heard the episode that we did with the founder the other day, and it was so impactful. The benefits that Analemma water can have on your brain, your overall longevity, your vitality, biological age, and cellular rejuvenation. This is something we do not want to miss out on. So you can check out Analemma. These are, I always say that you should have one in every household. So if you have someone that you don't know what to get for any holiday or birthday coming up, this is something for any health nut who is wanting to nerd out in their water, wanting to elevate their health in every level possible. If you are someone who is really into brain health and longevity, this is the gift for you. I use my stainless steel one every single day. I am obsessed with it. You can go to analemmawater.com and get 10% off by using the code HTH. Again, that is analemmawater.com using code HTH10. Again, that is Analemma, ANALEMMA-water.com. Use the code HTH10 for a discount. This is going to be your big, beautiful, unique, health-inspired gift for this holiday season. You'll thank me later when your cells are rejuvenated and you look like a badass stirring metal into your water. I got analemmawater.com using the code HTH10. Let me paint the picture for you. I was out of town this weekend for a girls' weekend. We went to the mountains. It was incredible. The air was nice and chill and crisp, and it was also a lot of energy. There were a lot of girls around. We had a lot going on, a lot of people time, and it was incredible. But as an introvert, I needed some alone time. I needed some space to deep breathe and decompress and gather my thoughts. What I did over this past weekend was take 3 minutes to myself. I would wake up in the morning, and nobody even knew I did this. I would wake up in the morning, and I know I don't normally do this, but I grabbed my phone and I got the Open app. I used the Open app to do 3 minutes of breath work. I knew that if I couldn't necessarily squeeze in 20 or a 15-minute meditation. But I knew I wanted something to actually act fast and regulate my nervous system. I did about 3 minutes of breath work, and I'm telling you, it shifted the entire state of my mind so that I could be more present during the day. I wasn't snappy, I wasn't anxious, and I was on my period last weekend, which means that I was extra spicy in the mind, and I was very short-tempered, and this really did help to regulate my nervous system. I went to Open, used the 3-minute breathwork app, and it changed my day. You can do this too, especially if you're an overthinker, if you get anxiety, if you get overwhelmed in social situations. This is a fantastic basis for you. Open is one of the only apps that you can use that is incorporating mindful movement. It incorporates meditation, breath work, and of course, other mindfulness tools. But you can go to withopen.com/hotter and use the code HOTTER for 30 days for free. You can join me in using any of these on-demand or live classes. I just love this app. It's aesthetically pleasing, it's convenient, and it's something that really will help your headspace. Use withopen.com code HOTTER for 30 days for free. You can give it a try. Again, that is withopen.com using the code HOTTER for 30 days for free. You will not regret it. Make sure you check out their breathwork. A lot of my friends know this. One of my first jobs was working at a pizza place. Second job that I had was working at a Smoothie King, which I don't know if you've ever heard of. Where are you located again? I'm sorry.
I'm Canadian, so I don't think we have those. No.
Okay. Yeah. But if you have a smoothie place where they use syrups and pumps and
Is
all
it
these
like
things.
a Dairy Queen, but for fruit? Like,
No, not exactly.
okay.
The queen and the king. I get it. It's supposed to be a health food store where you get protein shakes and fruit
Got it.
smoothies and things like that. However, when I first started working there, it was because a boyfriend that I had at the time was working there, and I was like, let's work together.
Okay.
And I worked there for a year, maybe less than a year. Got fired immediately because on a shift, not immediately, but I got fired. It took one time. I wasn't like a shit employee and then got fired. It was like doing really great. And then boom, one day I just wasn't on the schedule again because I kept sending people to the smoothie shop down the street that used real fruit, that used no processed ingredients. I was like, hey guys, just by the way, you wanted this blueberry? And I'm like with the syrups and the blueberries. And I was like, guys, this is what is in your smoothie. Enjoy. And they were like, okay. And so I was working with my boss at the time, and that's how I knew. I was like, Aries.
That's what I was just thinking while you were saying that.
And I mean, I think that at that time it was, hindsight is 2020. Should I have been doing that? Absolutely not. This was my job that was paying me, but I proceeded to understand this is not leaving me. Right. And then when I went to college, that was a time when I was always the one who was the healthy friend. And I had a lot of healthy friends, but I was known as the healthy friend who would always do the grocery shopping. I had a juicer when I was 15. I was cooking with I would get like cast iron skillets for Christmas. It was always me doing the big batch soups and the juice cleanses and the whatevers. That's when extremes started to really happen for me in the food space. Yeah. I would be super healthy all day. And when I mean healthy, I mean only whole foods, would never do chips, wouldn't have a soda for 15 years, haven't in 20, wouldn't have sugar and anything. But then at night I would, we'd be drinking like Hypnotic. I mean, disgusting, awful blue, whatever we were drinking.
Yeah. And it's then like jungle juice in college.
Yes, precisely. Yeah. The more brightly colored it was, we were like consuming this. I would be great during the day, super into fitness. Then I would have a couple drinks and I would immediately isolate. That's how I knew alcohol. I don't have a substance problem. I'm happy to say that I don't have a bad relationship with alcohol at all. It just, it brings something out in me that typically wants to isolate. And so I would always order this giant sub sandwich with like mayo, turkey, I mean, every meat, every cheese, every vegetable, whatever it was. And I would just go like lock myself in my room, watch Netflix after I had a little bit of drink. So I'd always leave early, be by myself. And then the next morning running, green juice. It was obsessive. Yeah. And I started to come out of that once I think that college just wasn't, I don't think I was a person that was meant to go to college for that whole time. And I think that I was just starting to understand what a gut feeling was, but I couldn't put my name, I couldn't put words to it. Yeah. And had I been able to have more backbone in my decision making, maybe I would have graduated earlier. Maybe I would have said, cool. But I did some things that I knew were against my gut and they didn't serve me. And they ended up teaching me lessons, but definitely not serving me at the time. And after college, that's when I really found more balance in the weight training and the how to have healthier habits and balance. And I hate the word balance because it's so convoluted and it's different for everybody, but that's when I found my sweet spot, less extreme. Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense. It sounds like such a sort of classic trajectory too. I think, at that age, especially we're like, who am I? And there is people, right, who obviously they're super extroverted. So when they go out, they just want to be out. I mean, I have friends who would go out 5 days a week or more or whatever. And, and I mean, I always had to have a nap before going out because I didn't even understand how people did it. But
I'm like, what drugs? What drugs? Honestly. I haven't seen you do drugs, but are you on them? Because you must be.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah. Do you think, like, I'm curious, like that, you talked about like going into sort of like self-isolation post drinking and
Mhm.
being in your room alone and having that sandwich. Do you think that you were just craving like, or what do you think you were craving when you were getting,
It's so
aside from
funny
the
to
sandwich?
picture it. I wasn't there,
Yeah.
you know, like clawing at the windows, nails bleeding, and like eating my hair with a sandwich. But I was definitely like watching Netflix. I mean, I was
Right.
not
Uh-huh.
going crazy.
Yeah.
But I don't even remember. I just had that vivid picture in my head. What was your
What was
question?
I asking? Yeah, because I have, okay, I didn't want to project, so I was going to say something that I want to ask you what you think you were looking for. You know, like I think sometimes when we drink some, in the end, you kind of, you're trying to give yourself what, like your inhibitions are down, so then you're giving yourself something, right? Like,
Yeah.
and so I'm just curious what you think that was, if you've ever even thought about it, like that
W-
period. Yeah.
Yeah, you're so right, because when we drink it, they always say, you know, your true self comes out.
Right.
And I was never an angry drunk. I was never one to be crying over boys. I was definitely still like boy obsessed, but I think that looking back, it had a lot to do with the fact that I never felt like I I really never felt like I could be myself. I never really
Mhm.
locked into a huge group of friends. And I had great friends and they were
Yeah.
always very supportive, but it took two to tango. And there was something about me that just wasn't, I was hitting walls emotionally that didn't allow me to connect with other people. I was always seeking to go visit a friend in another school. I would go home a lot of weekends and just try and feel a sense of groundedness. And I
Mhm.
think that a lot of it had to do with the set fact of I didn't necessarily want to go to college initially. And I worked hard
Mhm.
and I was appreciative of it. And I had a job and great friends, and college was a fun experience. But
Yeah.
I think the entire time I knew that that's not where I was supposed to be. It was
Mm.
also a very cold mountain town. And it, I didn't feel like it was the right, even geographical space. I think that I was so deep connected into what my body knew it needed, but it didn't
Right.
know how to get it out. So the minute I graduated, I flew to Arizona and moved there.
Wow.
I went
Were
from
you in
being the
Colorado
snow.
or where were you?
No, I was in I was in Boone, North Carolina. It's a really small mountain
Okay.
town. It's Appalachian State. It's an amazing school, and I'm
Cool.
so like looking back to visit, I think that I would go back every weekend if I could.
Oh, yeah.
But living there
Mm.
was not my soul place.
Yeah.
And so I immediately knew where my
Wow.
soul place was, and it just me as a person was, I was two different people. I was like the happiest version of myself ever. But
Mm.
it was just, it's so funny. Your podcast is called North Star Podcast,
Yeah.
and you think North Node, you think,
Uh-huh.
where is this in your astrological chart? And I'm
Yeah.
always arid, dry, desert, open space.
Mm.
And so I was in this cold, elevated, small town, everything close together. But I think that at that point I hadn't been able to figure out that, oh my God, there's these vast mountains. I just need to get outside more in nature. But the seasonal depression was definitely a thing as well.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, that completely makes sense. It is so wild how like environment, I mean, it affects us so much. And if you
Yeah.
weren't in that right place, it makes sense that you would, because what I didn't want to project onto you was actually kind of a similar conclusion, which was that, you know, in the end, it wasn't the right or the right space. So you go and you create your own kind of sacred space, you know,
Yes.
post that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I was like, well, I'm not creating, I have a few really, really amazing best friends that came out of
Mhm.
that. So eternally grateful.
Yeah.
However, I think that I was like, hey, look, you made a couple friends, let's get out of
Get
here.
out. Get
But
out.
yes, but I mean now if I have a gut feeling,
Uh-huh.
I'm if I don't listen to it, I am immediately, oh, that was wrong. It was my gut. I can like pinpoint the exact moment that my gut tells me, don't do
Wow.
this or do it.
Incredible. So what did bridge that gap? Because you said that you were coming into your intuition and like understanding that, but
Mhm.
you weren't there, which again, total like most people aren't there
Mhm.
as, an early adolescent. So how did you get to that place of being so in tune?
I think one moment that I can remember specifically was, and I'll sum this up. I spoke about this extensively on a different podcast recently, and it just,
Mhm.
whew, we went deep. But there was a moment, it was my junior year, and it was either my sophomore or junior year. And I was doing my best to make friends. I was doing all these things. I was dating some guy, and it was about to snow that day. And I was invited out on a hike. And I thought, this is something I should want to do right now. I
Mhm.
like going outside. I like hiking. I like hanging out with my boyfriend and these people. And we all just started becoming friends. I should want to go. And I remember looking at myself in the mirror while I was putting my shoes on and my jacket. And I just kept thinking, why do I not want, I don't I don't think I should go, but I
Mhm.
don't have any good reason of why I shouldn't go. So I'm just going to go.
Mhm.
Ended up going. We got finished with our hike and got into a really horrific car accident, broke my back, flipped 2 times.
Oh my
The
God.
most insane feeling. But I
Wow.
remember that intuition. And I'm not saying anything about anything except for the fact that maybe it was my subconscious mind saying, hey, there's going to be a snowstorm. Hey, these are new people. Hey,
Right.
winding roads out of your control. And I just remember it was the wildest thing. And afterwards, I was just like, I remembered that feeling. I remembered the feeling. And that's how that was just the beginning. It took much more time to figure that
Uh-huh.
out. But I was like, I gotta just trust myself. I gotta trust
Yeah.
myself. And that goes with food. That goes with
Uh-huh.
workouts. That goes for relationships, friends, jobs. And if I don't trust myself, and that's where I think the past, maybe 8 years have been learning how to trust myself.
Mm.
And then moving forward, it is now the faith component, which is, why would you trust yourself if you don't have faith that what is going to be instead is going to be for you?
Mm.
And the faith is that jump and the net shall appear situation.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, okay, I see the net, now I'm going to jump. It's there. Trust yourself. It will appear. And so that's what I'm working on now.
Yeah, I love that. So it's and I know from listening to your show that you definitely have your spiritual side. And you already mentioned like astrology. What are you working on, you know, bringing into your life or having faith with respect to? Is it relationship? Is it more work or what's coming up for you
Sure.
at this point? Yeah.
At this very moment, it's also a full moon in Aries,
Yes.
and which I don't know if I don't really know much about it. It's just I know my algorithms. I follow enough people that this stuff comes into my ether. Do
Yeah.
you know anything specifically? Because I only know high level, like what, a little bit.
Same. Honestly, I'm like, why can't I have such a hard time with any of it sticking in my brain? I think because it's so complicated. I read it and I'll read a whole article and I'm like, oh my God, I forget already what
Yes,
what they just said.
you
Um,
resonate with it so hard,
yeah,
and then boom.
it's so
Yes.
weird. And then I so admire people who fully, I even with respect to this particular full moon, I'm like, I know I just sent my friend something about it, but I couldn't tell you what it was about other than focusing on yourself.
Yes.
That's it.
Yes. So what I know about this full moon
Yeah.
is that it's in Aries, which genuinely all of this means nothing to me until I start to read about the
Uh-huh.
descriptions of it. And it
Yeah.
said that this is a fantastic time. I think it's until the 10th until the 25th or something, that it's a time to reset. It's a time to step into your own power. Anytime that you have been feeling out of your power in your relationships, it's either a time to stand your ground and leave it and with faith, or to stand your ground and say, hey, I want to fix this. So if it's
Mm.
something really valuable to you, it's a time to fix and
Mhm.
be powerful in your statements there. And also, that's the gist of it that I got,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know?
That's what I seem to have taken away that you just reminded me of. So thank you.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
So give me examples of what's coming up for you right now. And sometimes was there, was it coming up for you before you knew about the Aries in full moon, or were you like, oh my gosh, this is all making sense?
That's a good question. You know what? weirdly, because I didn't zone in on this for myself yet, my friend that was talking to me about what she was trying to, what was it, like call in like clients or something, and he was focused on things externally. I think it was last month, and they turned out well. And then she was starting to focus more on like clients and like her podcast and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, great. Like, this is a good time. I haven't reflected yet for me, obviously, but,
but sometimes reflection happens as you're speaking about it. It's a real thing.
True. This is true. I feel like in a way though, this is where I sort of struggle. Like, I also feel like all of these messages could be applied always in a way.
Exactly. That's why I'm like, was I already thinking about this? And now it's just the divine timing of the words.
Yeah. This is like I know a little bit about this actual science, but in terms of like the periods, I'm like, you could tell me anything and I'll just believe it because I'm very open. I'll just take anything.
But it's also, what is it? The reticular activating system in our brain that if we're thinking about, okay, I need $500. This is just an arbitrary number.
Right.
But, okay, I need $500. You're going to start seeing $500 everywhere, different opportunities.
Precisely.
So it's that.
It's like the Audi effect. I think that's what they call it, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
One in Audi, then you start seeing them everywhere. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Same with numbers and all of this. So I kind of take everything with a grain of salt, but I also think it's very fascinating.
I'm like, you know what? Go ahead, lean in. Do you know what? That's why I'm leaning in so hard to this one, because I was like, okay, I am an Aries, and actually these things were happening right before I found out about new moon in Aries, and I was like, I'm just leaning in. So I've been journaling and looking at all these things, and not too much because I don't. But that's where the faith comes into play.
I like it.
It's cool.
It is. And when you take it in that way, it's sort of like, I remember my dad saying to me when I was like a kid, he was like, you know what, like whether or not you believe in, religion or whatever, because, he kind of didn't, came from a mother who is very Catholic and Italian and all of that. And he was like, it's going to make you a better person. So like, why, there's not really a downside to it.
Yeah. And that's what I've realized is that there's this book that I'm reading that some guy that I follow, he recommended it in a one-off post, and I was like, okay, done, buying it. Got it used on Amazon for $3, and I've been reading it, and it does reference God and Christ a lot, but the messages in it are more about abundance and power and self-reflection and affirmation and what is meant for you won't miss you type of thing. But it's like, so they are very much intertwined, and I think that however you want to approach it, then go for it.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to church. I don't pray before. I mean, I was raised Catholic, but I don't.
Yeah. Anyways. Like a lot of us, white people from North America, I feel like that's
exactly.
Like we're it's like these, what do they call them? Like Christmas, Easter. I don't know. There's a saying for it. It's like a Christmas, Easter, sort of like very commercial, like
exactly
version.
Like, I like the holidays that I understand religion more when it's based on holidays type of situation, or I can't figure out the word either, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's interesting that we're like going, but I don't this is actually great too. Because you know what, I think it's just interesting how a lot of our generation has found so much more depth in like these non-denominational ways, like whether it's like reflecting, as you were just talking about with like the full moon in Aries, it's like, it's not like this devotion to astrology. It's just like, this is bringing up so much reflection in me, and it's having this like profound impact that I feel in some ways our parents in that generation kind of didn't have, because they were starting to disconnect. So they had like, they didn't really have spirituality in their lives. I mean, huge generalization. This is just what I saw in Canada, but I mean,
well, I think that so much of that, it's interesting. I vacillate back and forth between, are we super introspective and learning and are we super open and understanding, or are we just narcissists a little bit and we want to learn? I'm like, oh, you want to tell me about myself? I will listen, and so of course, but then I think about it, the generations before us, they had outlines, and they were a little bit more not fact-based, but they had more reasons and they had more concrete evidence to their lives, where, and they had the 9 to 5s and there was the outline of your life.
Yeah.
And now in our generation, I think that we are open to these more nebulous thoughts of astrology and things that are open and a little more fluid, because, and maybe it's because we have a hard time sometimes explaining ourselves, defining ourselves, understanding ourselves. So we're like, well, if I can't explain it fully, then I'm just going to attach to a bunch of nebulous thoughts that all together make me feel good. And, but I mean, here I am. I'm very much, I'm the woo woo and the science and the,
I mean,
imagine trying to ask your grandmother, where is your, what is your rising sign? And she's, it's just not going to happen.
I need to ask you, what are your, okay, so you have Aries. Now that we're here, and I want to respond to that, but I also want to, I'm so happy I'm talking to a very tangential person, because some people would be like, what is,
No.
That's so funny. Do you know, I was wondering that with you listening to your podcast. I'm not sure if you've mentioned it. I'm sure you've mentioned it on some episodes.
I had to just search in my phone.
Yeah.
I have an Aries sun, Taurus moon, and Aquarius rising.
Ooh.
And I don't know what I know what Aries sun means, but I don't really know.
Ooh. I think those are beautiful. I mean, you know what I think of, again, very basic, but like Taurus, it's like a luxury sort of like pleasure, like enjoying sensual. It's like sensual in a way.
Love it.
And Aquarius, I always think of like wise and like seeking information, and those are beautiful signs in my mind to have. I don't know if they resonate with you and the way.
Well, I think that depending on who you're talking to, there's different ways of describing it. I had someone tell me that it was, well, you're stubborn and selfish. And I was like, look, fuck. Okay. All right. I guess I just have to take that. And then there's other people who have said that the Taurus is the grounding, steady, and my boyfriend's Taurus to the max. And I think that that's good with an Aries sometimes, because Aries can be all over, and then Taurus is rock.
Yeah, that's interesting. And just to go, because my closest friend is a Taurus, but she's very feminine, like very feminine energy. So the way she describes
like Scorpio?
Yeah. And the way she describes it is the words that I just used. So that's like my frame of reference. Whereas your frame of reference is your boyfriend, right? And he's.
Yes. It's all about the context in which something is painted for you. Well, what are yours?
Yeah. My rising is Scorpio, and then my moon is Gemini, and then my sun is Leo.
Oh, I love it.
So it's a little all over the place. But I think so is you have fire, earth,
and water, right?
Water.
Isn't it water? Isn't Aquarius water?
It's either that or air. But either way, you're all over. Like, same with me. You're like kind of well balanced, I guess, is the nice way to put it. Like well balanced in that.
And do you think? Okay, so you live in Canada. Where in Canada are you?
I'm from Toronto.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think that geographically that makes sense with your balanced chart? Are you a little bit near water, a little bit near open space? What's it like there?
That's so interesting, because no is the easy answer. I mean, Toronto is very much a city, like it's very city. And I didn't, not that I grew up downtown, although I've spent a lot of my life right downtown. But like I grew up out, so like close to the city, but in a suburb. And it's very like typical North American suburbs. So there wasn't a plentiful like water or anything really. I mean, like that.
Again, it's how you're raised. It means, I don't know if the charts have any indication. I think it's also just personal preference. I mean,
yeah. Okay, well, here's one way that we can segue back to you and your story and all that you do. Have you found in learning about yourself like, how has this like informed or like made sense to you with like the work that you do now? Like, do you see yourself in this and like the work that you've gone on to do? And kind of-
I definitely see myself as not a terrible employee, but someone who seeks out leadership
Mm,
and recognition. Unfortunately, I have to say that because it's really true.
it's honest,
But
yeah.
I like to prove myself and be actionable. And when I left the fitness position that I was in, well, I've been a personal trainer for 7 years, and the first couple of years I was on my own
Mm,
working a full-time job, and then I would do this on the side, and then I worked in nutrition, and then I got more for certifications in nutrition, did more studying in that sense, and started focusing more towards that, but as simultaneously a group class trainer. That setting was not for me,
mm,
and I thrived. My ego thrived, but I definitely
mm,
didn't.
mhm.
And so when I left there and I leaned fully into nutrition,
Yeah.
I think that that was a really good space for me to be in because I could focus on one thing, have
Mm,
several clients. So I was never bored. Everyone has a different situation, everyone has different goals. And then as of the past year and a half, I was given an opportunity to help run and be a part of my family's company, which is
mm,
42 years old. It's a professional public speaking and communications company.
mm.
And I actually haven't even spoken about this on my podcast. This will come out soon. But
Okay.
anyways, so
Yeah.
there it is.
Mhm.
But like nobody's who cares. But that's what I've been doing as I would say 60 to 70% of my job. So it's now podcast and building on that legacy that was set before me. And I think that
Wow. Yeah.
it's a really great segue because everyone needs communication. Everyone
Totally.
needs help refining their skills, making sure that their
Mhm.
message is being delivered in the way that they want it to be delivered in. Are you a boring presenter? Are you capable of connecting with an audience? Are you all these things?
Yeah.
And being able to utilize those skills for the podcast for nutrition, it has come full circle in a
Mm.
sense where you get the fulfillment of seeing other people transform in front of you, which is in a sense validating. And
Yeah.
then also using these skills in my own personal life and business. So to answer your question, I do think that what I have learned about myself has represented itself within all that I'm doing now.
Yeah.
And I think that by having a constant, by having a one larger job, one
Mhm.
steadier, more stable job will allow me to go back to the joy and the pleasure
Mm.
of the podcast. I mean, I never lost pleasure and joy from the podcast, but
Yeah.
for the nutrition and for these things and not be
Sure.
so all over the place.
Yeah.
And that's what I've noticed is good. I need the grounding, but I still
Yeah.
like to have pockets of that creativity.
Yeah, that's really good to share, like to share, because I do know it's talked about, but sometimes I feel like not necessarily enough when you are sort of directing your own ship, and sort of it can be a very ungrounding experience, like you were saying.
Mm-hmm.
And so to have that job that is giving you that groundedness and kind of freeing up
Mm-hmm.
your mental headspace and allowing you to,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, like have or like find the joy, and like it's really powerful. I'm sure that it must have changed your relationship with probably your nutrition work.
Sure. And I think that
Mhm.
it's also, and this goes back, any nutrition client that I have, it's okay to change your mind.
Mm,
And if you are stuck in a pattern or a habit of eating because that's what you know, or that's what has worked for
mhm.
you in the past, we evolve and there is a way for you to still enjoy things
Yeah.
while it not being your full livelihood. And
Mm,
same way with nutrition. If you have been plant-based for a long period of time and then you find that you keep wanting eggs or you keep wanting all these things, go have a
mm.
little bit of that. I think that we tend to box ourselves in And a lot of people think, oh, podcast nutrition are my full-time job. And that would be great if, putting it out into the universe. Like if Dear Media wanted to sign me, then hey, I'm in. Like, come on.
I mean, I think I will vote for that one. I honestly,
oh my God, that's a big old goal. And have never stopped thinking about it, but
you should reach out to them. Don't they have don't they have a recruiter?
Oh, don't you know how many times I've
done
okay.
I'm glad.
My numbers aren't what their average are. So I'm doing what I can to feed the audience that I have right now. And look, manifest destiny is real. If it's meant for me, it'll happen. But I do keep working at it. I tag them and everything. But
amazing.
I'm literally tagging them and everything. But the whole thing is, I think that so many people see on Instagram, they think, oh, well, if you're unhappy in your 9-to-5, quit. Yes, but we also, not everyone needs to go be an entrepreneur. You can go find a different job that will take care of you and feed your 401k and give you benefits, and you don't have to think about it, so that you can go have these awesome hobbies, and you can go paddleboard after work, and you don't have to worry about employees that you have to pay. You don't have to, grass is greener. And grass is, it really is perspective. So having experienced multiple 9-to-5s and also working for myself for the past 2.5 years, 3 years, 4 years, you can do both and you can change your mind. And we see people all the time who are 60 or 55 or whatever, getting a divorce and then finding the love of their life. Like, we see all these things, and same with food. If you have been eating burgers and fries, or you just have been unsure of what to eat your whole life, it literally is one decision. It's one decision. And the more you keep making the decisions that feel right to you and avoiding, when you start making good decisions for yourself, the bad decisions will come in a gut feeling. And once you don't ignore those gut feelings, the more you listen to your gut, the more it is refined. It's like it's like an algorithm where by listening to your gut, you create this perfect algorithm for yourself that it's only going to send you the good shit, and it's going to tell you immediately if there's something that's not going to be good for you. So, and that will come in the feeling of a gut feeling.
Yeah.
And I just think that that's so important to know.
Yeah, it really is. And I mean, that cognitive dissonance that we experience when it's like we start to realize that like what's more aligned for us is outside of this box that we've placed ourselves in. It's really kind of wild, because I've been through this, and I think most people have been through this at some point in their lives, if they're aware. It's just like a weird thing. Like, why do I want to, like, when you really think about it, okay, like, what is this box giving me? It's giving me sort of misery, and I've created it for the most part. It's usually us creating it, and the realization that, oh, I can just take it away. And it's
one
actually
decision.
simple.
And it does go back to evolution. Our goal in life is to live and feel safe. So it's not abnormal to desire routine and a little predictability and stability, because our nervous system, it would be fried without it in some sense. And I think that there are some tangible things like making sure that your body is metabolically flexible, so that if you do have to go 12 hours without eating, you're okay. You won't die, and you won't go into reserves and become a huge, like, raging lunatic. Or that goes to being able to, people are going to disagree with me on this, but being able to walk or run 2 or 3 miles to make sure that you're able to, what if you need to escape some terrible situation? Or there are these things that I think of in a very practical sense, but things like cold plunging or getting in a cold shower, having 12 hours to let your digestion really rest so that you can have sleep for healing, reducing processed foods that are chemicals. Like, we had a guy who, we live in a a apartment complex, and they're doing a bunch of landscaping. There was a guy a week ago who was going around spraying where they were gonna redo sod and put new plants down. And he was killing all of the weeds around there. And I went over to him and asked him very politely, "Hey, how's your day going?" Chatted about the weather for 10 seconds. And then I asked, "Do you mind me asking what you're spraying?" And he was spraying Roundup, which is glyphosate, which is we all have heard of this word. It's, massive carcinogen and has been shown in hundreds of studies to be linked to definite cancer. And I said, "Can you please not spray that on this building?" And he looked at me and he said, "Absolutely." He was like, "Trust me, I know exactly." He was like, "You don't have to say anything. I have to carry this thing on my back all day." And, I felt for him in that moment. I was like, shit, this is your job. You have to be around this all day long. But it's those little moments of bravery. And you might not think, oh, how is that brave at all? Well, it is when you are a woman asking someone who's doing every single house around you and then saying, "Hey, can we not?" And I just had to say, you can even ask I was like, "Feel free to have someone call me if they have a problem with this." Da, 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 da. I was like, "Our dog is here. He comes home. I don't want him sniffing it. I don't want it on his paws." Little moments of bravery like that change who you are as a person. And it helps you to truly lean into the person you want to be, strong, dependent on yourself, but in a healthy amount. I mean, little things you can do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that you just spoke to like your communications work as well. How is that just something with aging and becoming more grounded in yourself, or how have you developed that bravery, that ability to communicate, your needs? Because I think that's something, as you mentioned, women especially, tend to struggle with. I don't want to come off as blah, 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 blah. And
no, it's real. It's real. And I want to say that my grandfather started this company 42 years ago. My mother took it over for several years before she passed, and now it's still in the family. And I was raised to avoid words like and so and it's been ingrained in me that effective communication can directly impact the people you're talking to. You could have the most amazing message in the world, but if you are mumbling into your hands and using non-words every second, then it's going to be lost, and that message won't be clear. But as far as bravery, it's, practice, getting uncomfortable. And I think that doing small things that are just different for you are good for bravery. Like, I'm not brave. I'm really not. I just know that I will spend more time thinking about, if I think to myself, I will spend more time thinking about not having done this than doing it, it's not motivation. It's not determination. It's just that mini bit of discipline and that feeling of, I feel better once I've done something like this. And getting out of that comfort zone. I think that we have really dug ourselves into a huge, pardon my French, fucking hole of being able to communicate. There's no eye contact. There's no, you'll go to the grocery store and someone will be ringing up your groceries, and 70% of the time these people are making eye contact for 0.2 seconds, and there's no eye contact. There's no,
you mean the clerks, like even on the clerk's end?
On both ends.
Both. Okay. Yeah.
On both ends. People feel uncomfortable and they feel affronted when they're being addressed so directly. But also we are, and then I'll stop tangenting, but it's
no, this is so good. Keep going.
But think about one thing that we can do right now. And this goes for women. And this is something that I had to learn when I was working in a group fitness studio. They said, "You sound like a girl." And I was like, "Fuck you." And they, I was like, this is not, but they said, no. In order to command the room, you have to push your voice and you have to be able to, cause I was on a mic and you don't want to have a squeaky voice on a mic. It's just not appealing to hear in any sense, man or woman or whoever. And they didn't train me on how to push my voice, but I was like, oh, I think I get it. And so women find that this happens a lot with women, and this is not to generalize, but it's been my personal experience that women, we end up talking like this. And when you talk like this the whole time, it always ends up being like you're talking up and asking a question at the end.
Right.
And once you hear it, you can't unhear it. There will be people, you know, when I was, it's you're speaking like a question when it's not a question. You know what I mean? And when you start talking like this, it ends up taking a little bit of the confidence away from what you're saying. So if you're in a job interview, you're like, I think that this is the right job for me because I've been in this industry for a long time. And in this industry, it takes away your power. And so
you're even sitting differently. When I look at your body language, your chest, your neck, it's tight.
This is a protective pose that we go into when we start to communicate. So it goes as it will. The great thing about this, when you start to make this switch, is that nobody will notice, but they will notice when you talk like this and you end up speaking like you don't know what you're talking about and that you're not confident. You could be the most brilliant brain scientists in the world, cured a cancer, rockets. But if you're talking in a sense that it makes it seem like you are brand new to this industry and with the up talk, you cannot unhear it. You cannot unhear it. And that is one of the most powerful. And this is like women all over the world. Please stand up, please. And if you already do this, fantastic. But if you catch yourself speaking in up talk a ton, this is the time to change it. It will change your confidence. The difference between if you're up against at a job interview, the woman who has the exact same resume, but speaks with conviction and no up talk, likely going to get that position. It sounds more deliberate and intentional.
Right.
It's it's such a quick thing to integrate.
Right. It's such a good tip. And because it wouldn't be, you just wouldn't think about it. It's so invisible. You know?
It's distracting once you know it. It's you know that person who says like all the time or who says or whatever, and you almost make it a game thinking, oh, how many times are they going to say it? It just becomes distracting. It just becomes distracting.
Yeah. How do you because I know that I for sure use I mean, I catch myself and I'm like, oh my gosh, but
but not that often. It's not distracting. I mean, doing it once in a while is not a big deal, but when it becomes a distraction, you can't unhear it.
Right. So if you notice that you have sort of a verbal tick in that way, how do you is it just awareness over time?
It's awareness. We say this in class that it takes practice. You learned this over your entire life, but once you hear it, you cannot unhear it. If anyone is listening to this and they're interested, please send me a message, send me a DM. If you have a company or if you have employees that need to work on their sales presentations, have them reach out to me and we will talk about this course. It is life-changing. And that is 0.01% of what we do in class, but it's just the awareness.
The awareness. It's amazing. I just think of young kids, young girls. I mean, especially I remember, like no one's listening to me, and you're kind of like annoyed with everyone. And no,
and it's not that it's a bad thing. It makes you a bad public speaker, communicator. It's the level of awareness that it will elevate the skills that you already have.
Yeah, it's just very interesting because it's almost like we're taking that power back and taking responsibility for how the world engages with you, which, we talk about all the time now. I mean, most people in this space, they talk about it all the time, but not so tactically like that, which has such a huge impact on the day-to-day, almost hour by hour. That's huge and so simple, once you're aware of it.
It's so simple, but it's big. And again, you might be giving yourself a pat on the shoulder. Hey, I didn't talk up, but nobody's going to notice. Just keep going. Just keep going.
Oh my goodness. I love that. I honestly just looked at the time. I honestly cannot believe I still have like a whole list of questions.
I'm so sorry. We can rapid fire. I just tangented so hard. I apologize.
No, honestly, it's always better that way. I find it's usually better than me just like going through. But yeah, because we did talk about this. I actually love that we talked about this stuff. It fits this audience,
I know we meant to talk about nutrition, so we could still.
You know what? Let's just keep it simple. We don't have to go crazy. Let's just say, what practices are helping you right now, or what is helping your clients or your previous clients, or what is a common concern? However you want to answer this, like sort of a takeaway that people can take, because you are a wealth. And the truth is, they can just go listen to your show and get tons of information there.
But one thing that I not harp on, but it has changed my life, and then it's again, it's always simple, right? But it's the rule of 4 that I have, and I consider a balanced meal carbs, fat, protein, fiber. So if you have fiber, that means your carbohydrates are likely whole foods based. You have some starch and different types of fiber. You've got some greens in there. Fats, just a little bit, like a thumb's worth of fat to help slow down the absorption of the carbs, and then protein for satiety.
Yeah.
If you can hit 4 out of 4 of those at a meal, that is awesome. And that's a nice balanced meal. If you hit 3 out of 4, also fantastic. If you're on a road trip and you can't get all that in there, that's fine. 2 out of 4, it's likely going to be a snack. 1 out of 4, I mean, unless you're eating 1 ribeye for a meal, it's probably just going to be popcorn or something. Just don't even count it. It's not a full meal. It's not a full meal. Yeah. But so the power of 4 has been extremely beneficial for clients who find themselves constantly snacking or have that crash or crave mentality throughout the day. Also really great for helping to stabilize hormones.
Yeah, I love that. And real quick, I'll just say before I let you go, because I remember, or I was listening to some stuff even today, and I don't know how old these episodes were, or I should have looked at the date, but because I know you've talked about like food combining, and you said it didn't work for you. And I was like, yeah, me neither. Like, or you had your, your discrepancies within that statement. But when I tried that, I was like, oh my God, I'm hungry like all the time. Like, I don't know, it just didn't work at all. So when you mentioned that,
it's like, you can change your mind.
Yes.
You can change your mind. And I did it for a long time. Yeah. And I will say, digestion wise, if I'm out to dinner, then I know that there's likely, if I try and do a full balanced meal in that sense, the 4 out of 4, it's likely, if it's chips, I'm just not going to do it, or because it's like the oil just doesn't settle in my stomach. But I will still practice if I'm doing a piece of dense protein, such as salmon or whatever plant protein I'm having concentrated. Yeah. I will still do predominantly greens or leafy greens and vegetables. Yeah. So I do still focus on that digestion wise, but some people, it works beautifully. Right. Some people have no problems with it and it fuels them and they feel satisfied. Yeah. And sometimes it works for a season of your life or for days at a time.
Totally. Yeah.
Again,
you're right.
I'm growing out of these extremes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I should say, I think the thing that really didn't suit me was honestly just like the fruit first part. Like that was just the only thing. Cause I was like, I think I'm going to be eating every hour until it's lunchtime if I'm doing this one.
And I'm down for fruit all day, but I will say if I have an apple with a meal, then I'm super bloated. So having fruit on an empty stomach does unless it's dark berries, I think that it's definitely better left on at least a slightly empty stomach.
Yeah, that's interesting. I did remember you saying that. But anyway, I mean, I could just go on and on, but I'm just going to say refer to Hotter Than Health because your show is really so good. You really are so good at talking to your guests and then having, your own conversations with the mic and addressing people's questions. And as I said, there's a little bit of comedy usually here and there with your tangents, but I love it. As you can tell, I'm with you on that kind of mind. And yeah, I think it's, fingers crossed that you're with, the manifestation that you want to come through with that comes through. I can see it. I can totally see it.
Thank you. Yeah. Oh, that's really awesome. And oh my God, I just had a review a couple months ago, maybe a month ago. And it was, someone wrote 1 star. If this girl talks about her bowel movement of her dog's bowel movements one more time, I'm going to lose my mind. I am dumber for having heard this. And
I don't think so. I completely disagree.
Oh my God. But it's so funny. Like having that on there honestly made my day. It was the funniest review. And I just thought to myself, you try having a 15-year-old dog. Best of luck to you, you know?
Yeah.
Like I said before, thank you so much for listening. If this was your first time on the Hotter Than Health podcast, make sure you are subscribed, like, and share this episode, and let me know what you think about it. You can write a review on Apple Podcasts, and it really means the world when you do. It's the greatest, easiest, freest way to support the podcast. But thank you for listening. Next week, we are going to have on a badass acupuncture, holistic medicine practitioner come on, and we're going to talk all things medicine, all things holistic approaches to lifestyle. And it is just Chinese medicine at its finest, and we go so deep into wellness. It is not even, you're going to just eat that shit up. Thank you for listening, and make sure you're tuned in for next Thursday's podcast.